All right. Hello to all of you, and welcome to week 5 Zoom live session. This is recorded for your benefit, and so I hope you have the opportunity to watch this video between now and the end of week 5. Welcome to you. Glad to be with you again. Let's just jump right into the worksheets here and get right down to business, shall we? Let me share my screen with you as we work through this week's worksheets, which are chapters 6 and 7 in the Epic of Eden. And here we go. All right. Oh, that's week 7. Let me get the right share. Let's try this again. There we go. Now we're here. All right, chapter 6, Epic of Eden. Diving right in. Question number 1 has to do with another ancient Near Eastern flood narrative called the Epic of Gilgamesh. And when you read in the textbook or you go online, you can read in PDF format the Epic of Gilgamesh, which recalls in a period of time in the land, Fertile Crescent of Mesopotamia, a massive worldwide, right, worldwide flood. And compare that epic then to Genesis chapter 6 through 9, the story of Noah and the flood. What are the similarities then, and what are the differences between these two accounts? Okay. Question number 2 is a thought question, but how does the picture then of waters below and windows of heaven, waters above, how did these pictures of the pre-scientific worldview of the author shed light on the genre of the text? Okay, first, this is kind of this is a deep question, so do your best with it. But a genre, right? A genre is a type of literature, or it's a category of composition. So they're just like in music, there are different genres. There's rock and roll, there's hip hop, there's country, there's rap, there's jazz, there's classical. Those are all different categories of composition or genres. Same is true for literature. We have history, we have fiction, nonfiction, sci-fi, fantasy, just all kinds of poetry is another one. For example, types of literature. So when you think about the creation narrative as being ancient history, right? It's like prehistoric history. How does the picture then, or this idea of windows of heaven and the waters below the earth, how does that shed light on how the author thought about how the world worked? Okay? All right, do your best with that question. I'm confident you can. All right, question number 3. What is a decreational event? So the author of the textbook goes on to talk about the flood as a decreational event, which is simply what has been done or what has been completed in Eden, the Garden of Eden, has been undone then in the flood of Genesis 6, 7, 8, and 9. All right, another ancient an ancient creation account called Enuma Elish. Read Enuma Elish. You may do this via the web, or you would just read parts of it from the textbook. What are the similarities then between Enuma Elish and Genesis 1, pages 144 and 145? And then finally, question number 5, define the word ideology. I've defined it here for you just as you can use my definition or find your own, but ideology is simply an explanation of the cause or reason for something. Okay. Then we get to some interesting discussion here on pages 152 and following. Who were the Nephilim? Now there are 3 major theories about who the sons of God were and what they did to the daughters of men. And so, three theories on this. Let's just jump right into page 151, shall we? And check this out. Theory number one is the most popular one. It's also probably the most sensational one. Is that the sons of God are male angels who, due to the fall of Satan, reside on a planet and procreate with human women who are the daughters of men. Sons of God as angels is inferred, right? It's inferred. It's not directly stated, but it's inferred from the biblical text, particularly the book of Job, where angels are spoken of as sons of God. And their sexual sin, then, with the daughters of men is inferred, but not directly stated, in the New Testament in Jude chapter 1. So then the offspring are thought to be semi-divine, superhuman creatures, maybe something similar to Achilles or Hercules in Greek mythology. All right. A second interpretation of the sons of God and the daughters of men has to do with the class system. That is the human royalty. The sons of God are human royalty. They're upper class. The daughters of men are commoners. They are a lower class, and their union then results in some sort of impurity in the race. All right, and there's some support from the biblical text for this interpretation. There's a third interpretation, which goes like this: the sons of God are the sons of Seth, right? So, and then the daughters of men are the daughters of Cain. And so these sons and these daughters came together in sexual union, and then sexual union to have offspring, and the offspring then were the Nephilim. So the sons of Seth, the daughters of Cain, mingled to have the Nephilim, and they were some sort of corrupt race because of the intermingling of these classes, which made then, as the author states at the bottom of page 151, made the annihilation of the race by means of the flood necessary. All right, so there's three major ideas about that need for you to explore in the textbook. Now, moving along, question number 7 has to do with what are the promises then of the Abraham covenant? So I've just given you some generalities here. Very generally speaking, it's about a people and it's about a place. Now I need you to say more about the specific promises regarding the people and the place, the descendants and the promised land, essentially for Abraham. And then question number 8, this is the last one on this worksheet, is read Galatians chapter 3, 1 through 9, and also in the textbook, and talk about the significance then of Abram and Sarai's name changes. What did it mean to get a new name? And I've just written here that according to the author, when the Lord changes people's names, he establishes their new roles as the parents of a new line of a chosen people. In other words, what we're seeing with Abraham and Sarah, as their names were changed, we're seeing a new Adam and a new Eve. They've taken on new roles as parents in a new line of chosen people. All right? Okay. Moving right along to the next chapter. Find this document. Chapter 7. Share this with you. Okay. And then in chapter 7, we are moving along and talking about Moses and the tabernacle and the Exodus, which is the most significant event in Israelite Jewish history. And so the first question talks about the difference between internal and external evidence. Internal evidence, the Bible; external evidence, archaeology, either supporting or refashioning biblical claims. Why would biblical scholars then ignore the internal biblical data, putting the date of the Exodus at 1447, and opt instead for 1290 BCE? All right, so what we see here is really quite simple. According to the internal data of the Bible, we should be looking for evidence of the Exodus about 480 years before Solomon began building the temple. Now, Solomon began his reign around 970 BCE, which then, if you do the math, just add 480 years to that, it puts the Exodus right around 1470 BCE, right around that 1470, 1447, 1450 mark. That's what the Bible says. Now, archaeological evidence, that is external evidence, shows that the Exodus happened around 1290, so almost 200 years later. And the reason for that is that biblical scholars believe that the biblical account is just too neat, it's too tidy. Take the number 480, for example. It's a significant number, it's a special number in ancient thought, and it is representative of 12 cycles of 40 years. 40 is a significant number, so is the number 12. And it's used to symbolize then the formalization, I say, of God's presence with his people, first at the Exodus, and then followed by the building of the temple. So it's just a little too convenient, right? 480 is a symbolic number used to communicate that God has been with his people from the very beginning, from the time of the Exodus, even before then, but really the time of the Exodus, from their freedom, liberation from the land of Egypt, and into then when God dwells with his people permanently in the building of the temple. So then what's the difference between external and internal evidence? Which is more authoritative, do you feel? Or how do internal and external evidence work together, right? Especially you can see on page 170 in the story of Joseph. Question number 3, why did Egypt always have food, even during drought? Page 171, the author gets into the Nile, into the valley, the plain, the area around the Delta Nile River Valley, and talks about how even in the harshest times, the land always produced grain, even during times of drought. All right, so you can read about that and write your response from page 171. And then as you read the Joseph story in Genesis chapters 35 through the end, through chapter 50, what was the Hyksos period in Egypt, right? This is simply a 100-year period, approximately 1650 to 1550 BCE, where due to the influx of Semitic people, right? We're talking about those from the land of Israel and the surrounding regions there. Is a 100-year period where, due to the influx of the people, they actually were ruling in their area in Egypt. That is until about 1550, the native Egyptians, those who were patriotic and loyal to their country, overthrew them and began to enslave them. All right, so that's what the Hyksos period is in Egypt. And what does the author claim then to be the single most important event in Israelite history, and why? And just quite simply, the Exodus and the journey to Mount Sinai is the most significant. So talk about why. Why is that significant? Then what are the functions of the Israelite law, the calendar, and the tabernacle? Where do you find them recorded in the Bible? All right, so you can discover where they are in the Bible. I'll leave that to you, but the law creates and organizes what the Lord required of the people. The calendar organizes the time and the seasons for yearly living, right? And then the tabernacle enthrones the Lord in their midst. So they just quite simply, that's what it is. Now, where do you find those things in the scriptures? The word theocracy implies that the Lord was Israel's true king. We live in a democracy, which is where the people rule, right? The rule of the people, democracy. Theocracy means that God is the ruler, rule by the divine or rule by God. All right. And then what were the roles of the prophet, the priest, and the king in Israelite society? We just see that the prophet was someone who spoke for God to the people. The priest spoke for the people back to God, and then the king ensured that the people fulfilled their covenant obligations, right? And then what's the meaning behind the bells on the high priest's robe? This is really fascinating story, and I hope you enjoy it. But once a year, on the Day of Atonement, you can read about this, right? In the scriptures, on the Day of Atonement, the priest entered into the most holy place in the tabernacle uh, to atone for the nation's sins for the year. And as a part of the high priest's robes, there were bells that were attached. And so, what was so significant about those bells being attached on the priest's garment? It's really quite fascinating. If you don't know, I hope you enjoy finding out why that is. And then question number 10, what is the significance of the tabernacle? Really, the tabernacle signifies, two things, right? Cohabitation and separation. Now, I want you to talk about how. How does the tabernacle signify cohabitation between God and his people, separation between God and the people? And right in that space there for me. And then just a couple more questions here for you. Why do Christians tend to think of the law, that is the Mosaic law, the Old Testament law, as a negative thing? So why do Christians think that the law is a negative thing? Well, there are a number of reasons for it, so tell me a few. And then describe some of the ways the Bible rejects the law as negative. So the author gives you some ideas, but also you can read about this in Psalm 19 or Psalm 119, for example. Read Psalm 19 and 119, and you'll see that the law is not, the Torah is not described as a negative thing, but a very positive one. What did then in Romans 7:12, what did Paul affirm about the law? Okay, what did Paul say in the New Testament about the law? What was its purpose? What did he affirm there? And then question 13 on page 184, what did the Jewish law teach? And here's some things that I wrote you certainly can add. According to the author, the law teaches that God is good, that God hated human sacrifice, self-mutilation, and temple prostitution. The law teaches that God was independent of his creation. He needs nothing from humanity, nor was he impressed with fancy temples. The Lord expected his people, however, to be different from the cultures around them and the gods that they served. Right? And then finally, Jeremiah 31 points out that the law can be effective when it is written where? So read Jeremiah 31. The law can be effective when it is written on the tablet of the human heart. There you have it. Now, as we before we close here, I want to give you a sneak peek of this week's evaluation questions. So let me pull that up for you, and then we will close. Week 5 evaluation. Here you go. Here are the questions for you. Share this with you. All right. 6 questions this week. The flood was the unleashing of the waters that had been tamed during creation. For that reason, the Noahic flood would be considered a decreational event. True or false? Question number 2. Around what year did Abram likely migrate from the land or the city of Ur? Question 3. In the ratification ceremony between parties involved in the treaty, the weaker party walks through a bloodied sacrifice. True or false? 4. Why is the Exodus event arguably the single most important event in all of Israelite history? Options for you to choose the best answer are there. Question number 5, fill in the blank. The blank creates and structures the nation by defining what Yahweh requires of them. The blank organizes Israel's time, specific to feasts, festivals, and ceremonies. And then finally, which of the following is not a type with an antitype in the New Testament? And you can pick the best one. So which one of the following is not a type with a complementary antitype in the New Testament? Okay. All right. As always, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm here to serve you, to help you, to guide you, and help you do the best possible work that you can in this course, as well as learn as much as you possibly can. Time is short. We only have one more full week of class left before we are done, and also be working on those final papers. Many of you have emailed me or called me and let me know what you are writing about. If you have yet to do so, please find a way to message me or email me or call me. Let me know what you are working on, just so that I am aware that you have been thinking about it and thinking about the final paper and preparing to do some research. And if there's any way I can help with that, I'm happy to do so. Thanks for tuning in here. I hope you all have a great weekend, and I will be talking with you in the discussion threads. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great day. Take care.